Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 115 of the Tick Bootcamp podcast. The title of today's interview is Fitness, Faith, and Mindset, an interview with Alaina Hamade. My name is Richard Johannesson.
And I'm Matt Sabatello.
Now, we named this episode after Alaina Hamade's business. This is a young woman who became sick with Lyme disease as a child, but she turned that bad experience into something positive, and she became an entrepreneur, and she started a business that is designed to help other people who are suffering from illnesses.
But Rich, there is a sad part to this story, and that is that Alaina found a rash on her leg. Her mom thought it might be Lyme disease, but they never sought the help of a Lyme professional to get a proper diagnosis and early intervention that would have prevented chronic Lyme and all of her neurological Lyme symptoms that developed later on in life.
But Matt, this young woman would not allow a terrible childhood experience to keep her down. What she did is she went through a transformation. She's become a healer, and she's turned to entrepreneurship to help other people through their challenges. And she created this business of fitness, faith, and mindset. So Matt, I'm really excited to introduce this young woman to the Tick Bootcamp community, Alaina Hamade.
Hey, Alaina, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Now, we're really excited to have you. So Alaina, tell us where you're calling in from.
I am calling in from Pennsylvania.
And are you a native of the state of Pennsylvania?
I am not. I was actually born and raised in Georgia.
So you're a Southern gal.
I am. I'm a Southern girl.
So what was your life like as a gal growing up in Georgia?
Growing up in Georgia, I had a pretty normal life. Lived with my parents, did all the things you do when you're young. I didn't get sick until high school. So before then, it was pretty relatively boring.
So let's just talk about your high school experience. Were you aware of ticks and Lyme disease during the course of your childhood?
I had no idea what that even meant. We had a family friend that had Lyme disease really bad, but I never knew that's what it was. And so as I started to get sick, I started to learn more about her journey. She completely, got better, and she had been sick for years. And so she ended up giving me a lot of hope. But before that, no, I had no clue what that even meant.
Do you even recall having been bitten by a tick during the course of your childhood?
No, I remember we had a pet that had some ticks on it one time, like years and years and years ago. But I thought that that's only animals got them. I didn't know that they could get on people or that they could make you, basically really, really ill.
So my understanding is that you actually are from two states, right? You spent some time in Georgia and some time in Pennsylvania.
Yes. So my parents got divorced when I was a freshman in high school. My mom moved back to Pennsylvania to be closer to her family. And so I spent all of high school. I decided to stay. And I would travel back and forth pretty frequently. And so a little bit of both.
So we know that Pennsylvania has a very high rate of Lyme disease. When you were spending any time in Pennsylvania, did any of your relatives or family talk to you about ticks or Lyme disease?
Never. Nope.
So let's walk back a little bit to your childhood in Georgia. What kinds of things were you doing, and what kinds of things were you pursuing as a young person? Meaning, what were you dreaming about?
Just when I was in high school, like before.
Yeah. What were you planning to do?
I was a junior in high school, so it was a lot of talk about the future, about college, going on college tours, and that's what I was doing around the summer when I got bit and when I started to feel sick. Just really planning for the future. I had a boyfriend. I was just, you're hanging out with friends, your typical teenage girl.
So what were you planning to do when you went to college?
I was planning to go to a big Southern school, something in the SEC with football and all the exciting stuff. That was my plan. I wanted to study psychology because I've always had anxiety a little bit since I was young. It just kind of runs in my family, and it was something I really loved learning about. So I was like, I'm going to be a psychologist. I'm going to go to this big school. That was my plan.
All right. So you were planning to become a psychologist. You were going to solve the challenges that you and family members have had for, in some cases, generations.
Mm-hmm.
You were going to have this big school experience. And how did that work out for you?
It didn't go as planned. Right around the time I was doing college tours was when I actually got sick. So it really changed everything of my plan.
So let's talk about your illness and how your illness progressed. How did you first start to know that you were sick?
So I was up in Pennsylvania, and I remember having this rash on my leg all of a sudden. I had no idea what it was, and I didn't really think anything of it. And it kind of grew a little bit. And I was like, this is so weird. So I showed my mom, and she was like, she made a joke about it. She was like, that could look like a tick bite. And I was like, what? And so I researched it. I was like, no, I don't think that's what it is. She's like, well, we should check. And I was like, I don't know. And so we just kind of like let it go. It was just kind of a quick thing, and we just never talked about it.
Okay, but wait, stay there, because you really hit on something that I think is really important. So you said after you saw this rash on your leg, you called it to your mother's attention, and then you did some research.
Yes.
What research did you do, and what did that research lead you to do?
I had no idea what Lyme disease was. So I just looked up because she said, oh, it could look like this. And so I just looked that up, and I'm looking at all these pictures. I'm like, I don't think that looks quite right. Like, it's probably okay. And then I clicked the information and I saw that, Lyme disease, I had no idea what it was, but it was like, oh, all it is you just take some antibiotics and you'll be fine. So it's like, okay, this is not a serious thing. Even if it was that, which I don't think it is, it's not a big deal. And whatever, if it stays, I'll go to the doctor. And it went away.
So you did consider Lyme disease very early on.
For like 2 seconds, before knowing what it was, I did.
And then you did some research, and your anxiety was quelled because the information that you received suggested it wasn't a big deal, and all you would have to do is take some antibiotics for a short time and you'd get better, correct?
Yep.
Okay, so tell us how it progressed from there.
So then after that, within a few days, actually, I started getting like these dizzy spells, which was super weird. And I remember the first time it happened, I told my mom, I was like, I'm really dizzy. I was just sitting down and all of a sudden it was like the whole room was spinning and I was like, this is crazy. And so she was like, maybe, you need to eat something, whatever. And then that was the only, time that happened. And then for a few weeks I was fine. I went back home. It was summertime. So me and my friends did a lot of things outside, a lot of group activities. And all of a sudden, like I just started feeling really sick. Like I had a cold. And I was like, this is so crazy. Like, who gets a cold? It's hot outside. No one I know is sick. So I took cold medicine thinking, that's what it is. I have a cold. And now looking back, that can be an early symptom of Lyme when your body's fighting it. And it wasn't until I was going on a retreat with some of my friends. We were going some camp event for teenagers. I don't remember. And I was packing, and it was so crazy because I was trying to I travel all the time. My parents were divorced, so I travel literally all the time. And I was trying to pack for this weekend, and it was weird. It was like I was trying to pack, but my brain wasn't working. Like I would pack the suitcase, and I was like, wait, did I pack this? And I was like, Alaina, you should know what you're packing. And I got so frustrated with myself. I took everything out of the suitcase 3 times, and then I started crying because I was like, I think I'm dying. Like I can't think straight. What's wrong with me? And I still had no idea what was wrong with me or that I was even sick. But it was like my brain just stopped working right. It was crazy.
So let's just walk this back for a second. So you have a rash, you do some research, and the research doesn't lead you to believe that you should see a doctor. Because had you seen a doctor early on and had you been diagnosed with Lyme disease, all of these symptoms that started to develop later would not have developed, correct?
Correct. Well, maybe, because sometimes you can even get treated and still have it, but correct.
So you then went home. When you say you went home, you went back to Georgia. You left the Northeast where we are, and you went back down south for your Southern experience.
Yeah.
And it was hot and you got sick.
Yeah.
Now, was there anything in your earlier research that suggested to you that you should be looking to see if you're getting a summer illness, which would then signal to you that you should go see a doctor and get treated for Lyme disease?
No, because when I say that I looked at that for 2 seconds as a possibility, that's exactly what it was. I was standing there, I Googled the rash. I was like, no, it's not that. And even if it was, you take some medicine and you're fine.
Now, did you go to see a doctor when you got your summer cold?
No.
All right, so you took some cold medication, and now you're starting to get developing symptoms where you're starting to see some neurological symptoms where you're dizzy, and now you're having some trouble thinking and doing things that you would almost robotically be able to do because you were a kid that was living out of a suitcase, bouncing back and forth between Georgia and Pennsylvania, and you can't even pack your bag.
Yeah.
Is that something that suggests to you that you should now perhaps go see a doctor?
Definitely. Looking back, it is, but also
At the time,
no. And my dad and my stepmom were having, some marital problems during that time. So life was a little stressful. I'm thinking of college, whatever. So when I start to say, I'm feeling sick, like whatever, it's like, oh, you're anxious. Oh, you have a lot going on right now. And, that's kind of what I played it out in my head. And then when I would talk to my parents about it, that's kind of what they settled on too, was, oh, you just have a lot going on. No wonder you can't think straight. Like, that's just what we thought.
But you've never had that kind of problem before, right? I mean, I could tell just by looking at you and listening to you that you're the kind of kid that really has her stuff together, right? So, So if you've always been that kind of kid, why did you just write it off as, hey, you know, I'm under a lot of stress. I'm concerned about going to college. My parents are separated. My dad's having a second round of marital challenges. Why is all of that affecting your ability to think?
I think just I'm the oldest, so I have four younger siblings, and I've always just been the one that's expected to, have it together and be the leader. And, no one has to worry about Alaina because she has it, she's good on her own and she's independent and she grew up super quick and she travels and she does all these things. And I mean, I'm just a kid looking back. It's like, God, why did no one ask? Because I was so young. And I look at my sister who's now around the age that I was when I got sick. And I'm like, if she was having these symptoms or these issues as someone older, I'd be more concerned and, want to look a little bit deeper into it. And so it's hard to look back and be like, why did no one ask? Because I was just a kid. I mean, 16. How are you supposed to know when you don't feel good? You don't know.
So talk to us about what impact this was having on you socially. Were you able to socialize with your friends? Were you able to be the girlfriend you wanted to be? I mean, tell us how this was impacting your life socially.
My boyfriend went to college. He was older than me, so he had just moved. So that was another reason everyone thought I was just anxious. It was just life changing, and I was always so social, and my friends were everything to me. I did everything with them. I was super not like the most popular girl in high school, but I did everything. I planned the dances, I planned the events, and I knew that's who I was. I was just that's what people expected of me, and I loved people going out, doing all the things. And when I started to get sick and get more anxious, I started developing panic attacks. And I've always had anxiety. That always run in my family. I'll always have anxiety. But I had never really had a full-on debilitating panic attack. And that was kind of the thing that started coming next. And I got so scared of having these panic attacks when I was out that it really started holding me back from going anywhere. So I went on that retreat when I finally got my suitcase done. And I remember when I came home, I was like, something's just not right. Like, I just don't feel right. I can't think straight. I feel sick. I'm anxious. Like, I just knew something was wrong. And it started impacting me socially. I didn't want to leave the house. I didn't want to go anywhere. And then school was starting within 2 weeks. And at first I was like, okay, thank God, like school's going to start. It's going to give me some sense of like a routine. And I think I made it the first week, and within the second week of school, I couldn't even go for a full day. I was sleeping in, I was coming home early. It was awful.
So where did you ultimately start your college education, and what career path did you pursue there?
So this is while I'm still in my senior year. So senior year started, and all of a sudden I'm missing all of this school, and my dad and stepmom separated. So it's just me and my dad, and love him, but he has like no idea what he's doing when it comes to, single parenting. And so when I don't feel good, he's like, okay, like just take a nap, like whatever. My mom's super far away. So it wasn't until I started missing school at the time that they started to be like, something's wrong.
And why were you missing school? What was it about the developing symptoms that made it so that you couldn't even go to class?
The anxiety it was like my brain didn't work. I would have panic attacks. I couldn't think straight. Then the symptoms quickly started to progress. So this is probably 3 months after getting bit. And it was like my body would go numb. I would get these migraines every single day, which was just crazy. My body started to go numb. When I would walk, I would get dizzy spells again. It would look like the world was like on a tilt, if that makes sense. And I was like, there's no way this is anxiety. And so finally my dad took me to the doctor, and my mom's like, have them test her for everything. And they did, and everything's normal. I did a CT scan. Everything's normal. So what do? They put me on anxiety pills, thinking that's what it is.
So your neurological symptoms were developing, and they seem to be developing, from what we can see, in a very classic fashion for someone with Lyme. But you're going to doctors, they're putting you through batteries of tests. Did anybody ever say to you, we should test you for Lyme?
So after getting on the anxiety pills, and I was told how to take it, whatever, I start, sleeping in my dad's room at night, which is really crazy looking back because I'm 15, but I felt so scared that I was, going to die, that something was really wrong. And the anxiety was so bad. And so I start sleeping in his room and falling asleep with my mom on the phone next to my dad. She's states away. When you're sick, that's who you want, you want your mom. And
right.
taking the anxiety pills and, still missing school a lot and trying to keep up with work. And I couldn't focus. I've always been a straight A student. I ended up graduating high school and college with honors, but I started, failing tests. My parents were like, what is wrong with you? Like they're frustrated, not angry at me, but like no one understands. And so finally, I think my mom started to see once everything was coming back normal and I was still so sick, and I've never been the kind to ask for help. I'm the oldest. I'm supposed to have it together. She starts researching finally. And I think when she finally started looking things up about possibly what could be wrong with me, gave me a chance to breathe, because I was like, I'm 16. I just need someone to fight for me. And when she finally saw like, oh my God, our daughter who always has, her life together, like she's not okay. It finally gave me, a space to breathe. And she started looking up things like, MS and all these different things. And I went to the doctor and did, CT scans, and they're like, no, she's fine. And then was when she finally said, I think what you should be tested for is Lyme. And that was the moment.
So it was your mother's research that resulted in you coming back to the Lyme diagnosis. I mean, it's interesting that we're sort of going full circle here, because when you first showed the initial symptom in the rash, it's your mother that said, hey, that looks like a Lyme rash. Now we have all these developing symptoms, and we now come to another place where your mother is coming back to where she initially thought she should be, which is having you tested for Lyme.
Yeah. And she's like, you remember that rash you had, and da-da-da. I'm like, no, it went away. And she's like, I think you need to be tested. And so I went back to the doctor again, and I was tested, and of course it was negative.
So what doctor did you go to after you had that conversation with your mom, and what test did that doctor give you?
I was going to our regular, family doctor, and that's where I was doing just the normal blood test for Lyme and for everything else. And so everything came back normal, came back negative. And still on the anxiety pills, doing nothing different. And that's what they told me. The doctor told my dad, he like pulled him aside and he was like, this is all in her head. She's anxious. And, I'm not angry with the doctor, because they don't know, especially in Georgia, I can't expect them to know. But, when you are sick and you are being told it's all in your head, there is no worse feeling than no one believing you.
Alaina, did anybody tell you how inaccurate these tests actually are for Lyme disease at this point?
No. And I had no idea. But going forward, my mom came down I had a dance. And so she would come down for all the big events of high school. She would drive down. And so, the day of the dance, this is coming from a girl who's planned the dance. Like I planned it, you should be excited. And usually this is my thing. And I remember the whole day I was like, I just can't go. I don't want to go. I don't feel good. I'm anxious. I don't want to go. And my whole family is just like, something has to be wrong with her, either she's having a mental breakdown or like she's actually sick. Anyway, so my mom's like, you have to go. You have a date. You can't cancel. You have to go. So I go. I was so anxious. I told my mom she had to go eat at the same restaurant that we were all going to, because I was like, if something happens to me, I want you to be there. And mostly the scariest symptom for me was my body going numb. So like half my body would go numb. Like I could move it, but like if I would touch it, it was like I could barely feel it. It was the weirdest thing. And that's what freaked me out the most. And so when that would happen, it would trigger me into a panic attack. And then also when you're having a panic attack, that's a symptom of a panic attack. So it's like all these things together really scared me. And I'm a kid. How are you supposed to, that's scary to a kid, to anyone, especially someone who's so young. So I told her she had to go to the restaurant, whatever. So the next day, we do family stuff. And then it was the following day to go back to school. And she was leaving to drive back up here the same time I would leave for school, because it was like really early in the morning. I came downstairs. We were staying with my aunt, and she was like saying bye to me. And I don't cry. I'm not emotional. I don't cry. When I tell you I lost my mind, my cousins, my aunt, we're all in the kitchen, because that was a normal thing. Like she would leave, we would go to school, she would drive back home. And so it was a normal thing. I lost it in front of everyone. I don't cry at all, especially in front of people. My family always has made jokes about it for years, like that I'm like stone cold because I don't cry. I lost it. I don't know if it was from being sick or just from being so fed up. And I was like, you cannot leave me. I can't. Like, you can't leave me. And that day, she pulled me out of school. I told my dad, we went and told my dad that I was going back to Pennsylvania with her because I was I had to get better. Something was wrong. We had to figure it out. And that's kind of where it all started when I got closer to, starting treatment.
So, Alaina, what's surprising to me is the fact that, yes, you always had anxiety your whole life, but your anxiety level went to a next level post tick bite or when you got Lyme disease, and you were having physical symptoms which were making your anxiety worse. So, yes, you had anxiety, but the Lyme disease increased your anxiety, and then your physical symptoms and the fear of those symptoms increased your anxiety as well. So did any doctor at any point while you were in Georgia ever discuss the fact that maybe your anxiety was worse because you were having real physical symptoms?
No, I was in therapy. I forgot to mention that. I started therapy because they said it was anxiety. So when I got on anxiety medicine, I started going to therapy. And she had no experience. Like she was like, oh, feeling numbness in your body. Like I didn't tell her all my symptoms, obviously. She's a therapist, not a doctor. But she was like, what does your anxiety do to your body? Because that's a normal thing. And I'd tell her, and she would, give me these tips and whatever, and none of it worked. And my main doctor, no, he was like, anxiety can cause this and da da da, and like that's what it was. But it was horrible. Like the anxiety that I felt, I couldn't even say that it's anxiety. It was like feeling like your body's like giving up on you and your brain's giving up on you too. And it's just like, well, what am I going to do? And so finally, when I came back up to Pennsylvania, my mom took me to her doctor within a few days because she was like, we need to get a second opinion. I walk in, I tell her my symptoms. I tell her everything from point A to point, like to the end. And she comes in the room, the nurse goes out, the doctor comes in the room and she says, well, you have Lyme disease. I was like, what? And she was like, I'm going to tell you right now, that's what you have. I'm going to test you. It's probably going to come back negative, but I'm telling you right now that that's what's making you sick. And I just sat there just like in shock, basically, that I had just been through how many months? June, July, August, September, like almost 5 months of symptoms, doctor's appointments, medicine, anxiety pills, therapy. And then I take one appointment and she doesn't even have to do a blood test to tell me what's wrong with me. And as scary as it was to be told what I had, it was almost like the best moment because I was like, finally, someone believes me. Finally, I have something that I can move forward with and try to get better.
Prior to your diagnosis up in Pennsylvania, when you were in Georgia, did any of the medication they gave you for anxiety help you or any of the therapy help you, or were your symptoms continuing to worsen as your Lyme developed?
My symptoms got worse. Therapy was good for me. I think therapy is an amazing thing for anyone, but I had gone through a lot in my childhood with my parents, divorce. It wasn't a pretty divorce, and, thank the Lord that we're in a better place now, but I had been through a lot as a kid and I never talked to anyone about it. And I'm the oldest and expected, and that just plays a part. Is like I always wanted to be this person that had it together. I always wanted to be that person, and I was used to being that person. So I never talked about that. So therapy did help me, but the anxiety didn't change. And the medicine that I was given for anxiety, one of the big symptoms is like when I would fall asleep, I would feel like my heart started to race. And that was a weird symptom. So the medicine helped me fall asleep, but it didn't change any other symptom.
So it sounds like in a very short window, within a few months, you developed neurological Lyme disease and Lyme carditis, where the Lyme was actually in your heart as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, when your doctor first basically told you up in Pennsylvania that, hey, you have Lyme disease, I haven't even tested you yet, but you fit the classic symptoms of Lyme disease, you mentioned that you felt excited to finally have a diagnosis. Did you have any knowledge that Lyme could have long-lasting symptoms, or was this just too early on where you thought this was going to be a quick fix and then back to your normal life at that point?
Well, I think it was either her or one of her assistants that was in the room. I can't remember who it was, said that they also had Lyme. And she was like, well, still sometimes I get tired from it and like whatever. And so to hear from someone who had it, because like I said, I had no really prior knowledge, but to see someone who was like actively working in their job and say, oh yeah, I had that. I went through it and this is what I did. It kind of gave me some hope, but I didn't really know, that there could be a long lasting. I thought you would just take the medicine and be better.
So now what were the next steps? You mentioned that this doctor wanted to run a blood test. Did she start treating you before the results came in, or did she wait for the results of the blood test?
She started to treat me before that with antibiotics, and then she did the blood test and it was negative, but she said that could be normal because I had it for so many months. And so she treated me with one round of medicine. And then our family friend who had also been sick, she did like this deep list of every single, um, supplement she wanted me to get. Just we went to the store and we just bought literally everything she said because she had been sick for, oh my gosh, years, like half of her life before she found out what was wrong with her. And so I just listened to everything she said, took the medicine, and then I ended up doing 3 rounds of antibiotics before I felt pretty back to normal.
So about 3 months of antibiotics.
Mm-hmm.
And in parallel, you were taking all of these supplements recommended by a family friend. Do you recall any of these supplements and specifically what they were or any of them?
I can look up a list of it, but it was so many. It was like basic vitamins and then a lot of just fancier vitamin. It was all from the store. So like it's all stuff you can get there, but supplements that I had never heard of. A lot of things to support my immune system, my joints, my brain, a lot of random things that I was like, why am I having to take this? I'm so young. I should not be having to deal with this. And there were probably about 10 pills that I took every day.
Did your doctor up in Pennsylvania discuss with you that you should be on a probiotic and that the antibiotics could impact the good bacteria in your gut and also weaken your immune system potentially?
No, she said that she did say that the antibiotics could be hard on my stomach, but she never really said anything about taking a probiotic. So that was not something that I did.
Looking back, do you think you had such success in that 3-month window because of your friend's recommendation to supplement while taking the antibiotics?
Oh, absolutely. I'm not that person that's like, oh my gosh, medicine is horrible and you should never take it. And I'm like obsessed with being healthy and like health stuff and all of the natural options you can do in your life. But I do think medicine is such a blessing. And I wouldn't change the fact that I did antibiotics. I know that there's like a lot of controversy about it, but I mean, I think that both of those things together is really what helped me.
So talk to us about that 3-month window. So when you first started antibiotics, how quickly did you start to feel better? And I think you mentioned at the end of the 3-month window, you were pretty much symptom free, correct?
Yes. So I started to feel worse actually at first. And our family friend, she was such a, she was like literally an angel because she explained so many things that my doctor wasn't able to explain. And she just had been through this herself. So she just gave so many helpful tips and you need to take an Epsom salt bath and you're going to feel this way first. And she really walked me through and it was amazing to have her. And I joined some Facebook groups too, but I do have to say like, it's hard to be in those groups because there's so many people doing so many different things and it can be a lot, especially when you're the one that's sick, looking at all these different posts and a lot of people that are their treatment's failing or they're not feeling well. I think that can be a hard thing, but I do think a lot of it gave me helpful information because it gave me a place to be like, I'm not the only person going through this. So that's something that helped me.
So while you were on these Facebook groups about Lyme disease, did you see either yourself or anybody else getting Lyme shamed for the way they were choosing to treat their Lyme disease?
I started to see that a little bit. Like I don't remember clearly, but I think in the Facebook group, I was reading a lot of people that their family was not supportive or whatever else. And I was just really confused. I was like, if you're sick, why is your family, not supportive? But I also think we live in a day and age where it's like, if you're sick, like you're expected to take the medicine and get better. And that's kind of, the way that it is. So looking back now, I kind of have that understanding. But when I was going through it myself, honestly, I was more focused on my own journey than to really pay attention to all of that. But yeah.
So now you mentioned that you started to feel worse at first. So how long did you feel worse before you started to feel better with the oral antibiotics?
I'd say like the first month and a half, probably. Definitely maybe even the first 2 months before I really felt completely better. And then even towards the end, like when I was finishing up the antibiotics, there were still symptoms that I had. Like I would get joint pain and things like that. And that kind of that was the longest lasting symptom for me. But once my brain fog cleared up and I stopped having panic attacks every day, I was like, okay, we're getting somewhere. That was what I was like, if I am in pain in my legs for the rest of my life, cool. If it means I don't have to have panic attacks or not be able to think straight, I will take it. But probably 3 months before I felt completely, better.
And in that 1.5-month window where you started to feel worse, did anybody discuss with you the possibility that was a Herxheimer reaction?
Our family friend. Yeah, that's the only reason I knew about it. And then she told me to join these groups and I started researching a little bit on my own. So yeah, that's how I knew what that was. But I would have had no idea. So for someone that does not have, knowledge of that, they probably have no idea what they think it's, not working. So they're going to stop the medicine or whatever. I had no idea.
So it really sounds like this family friend was a godsend who recommended all these supplements, which I believe had a major impact on your body being able to recover with the antibiotics, and also detoxing because of the Herx reaction and doing things like Epsom salt baths and supplementation. So talk to us about these worsening symptoms. What specifically got worse? Was it the body pain? Was it the brain fog, or was it pretty much everything?
What got worse was definitely the body pain, and I would get headaches like in the top of my head. I started getting these weird headaches in weird places. That was what got worse for me. And I was really tired. I was exhausted. I could not even stand up in the shower. I would go from my bed to the couch and stay there all day and then go back to bed. I was exhausted.
And then once that period was over, was it like a switch was flipped, or was it a slow progressive improvement in your symptoms for the last month and a half of your antibiotic treatment?
It was definitely slow. It wasn't like overnight. I don't think anything really is. It's definitely was slower.
So did you do anything else aside from the oral antibiotics, these supplements, and then these detox protocols like the Epsom salt baths while you were sick to sort of help your symptoms while you were treating the Lyme disease?
At that time, no.
So now we're going to kind of fast forward to the end of this 3-month period. You're pretty much symptom free at this point, and now you are what? You're a freshman in college. Is that the time frame?
No, that was the first semester of high school. So then I got sick. So then September was when I moved back to my mom's, and I tried to do online classes, and I couldn't even think straight. So it didn't work out. So we were really nervous. Like, is she going to be able to graduate? Whatever. I started feeling better in December, and that's when you're really like, okay, are we going to go back to school? What are you going to do? And so I decided to go back to school for the second semester, moved back home. And that was just the best few months of my life. Like, to feel like, oh my gosh, I feel better. Oh my gosh, I'm back with my friends. Oh my gosh, I'm back in school. And oh my God, it was such a blessing. That was January. So then I graduated with honors on time. And that was a great thing. My family was so happy. But when I was sick was when I was applying to college. And that was kind of something that was hard because I got into South Carolina, which is where I was going to go. And then I got into school in Georgia, and I ended up, for more reasons than one, but I ended up staying in Georgia to go to school just because, partially because I got a scholarship, but also partially I know that it was because I was scared if I went so far that I would get sick again. So yeah, that was definitely a challenge, but I went to school and everything was great until I started to feel sick again.
So Alaina, in the interim between the time of finishing up your antibiotics and sort of being the normal Alaina that you were used to before the Lyme disease, and up until the time you got sick again for college, where was your anxiety level at? Was your anxiety at a base level also pre-Lyme disease at that point?
Yeah, it was normal again. I've always had like some anxiety, but it was nothing like before. When I tell you it was like being born again, that's how it felt. Yeah.
So we've learned that there are many triggers for people to relapse and have Lyme relapses once they've had Lyme disease as bad as you have had it. So do you believe that the stress of applying to college, having your life change and now go into a new space, and also worrying about potentially leaving your family, that all that stress caused you to have a relapse of Lyme disease at that time?
Definitely. So I went to college in August, and I started to feel sick again in probably January, February. So there were a good few months where I was fine. But when you're in college, I mean, I don't know if everyone's like this, but there was a lot of eating out. There was a lot of fast food. There's a lot of late nights. There's a lot of drinking. There's a lot of, different things, plus stress. College is hard. And then just like more family stuff was going on. And it was just, I was under a lot of stress and a lot of pressure. Plus I was not living a healthy lifestyle. And I think all of that kind of played a part. So January was when I started getting headaches again. And I was like, no, like that's not possible. And then the numbness started again. And I was like, are you kidding me? So I reached out to my family friend. I was like, is this possible? Like, am I sick again? And she was like, it is possible. You need to go to the doctor. And I was like, oh my God. It was so scary because I was scared that I would have to go through everything I just went through again.
Now thinking back to your first journey, was it your primary care physician in Pennsylvania who prescribed you with the 3 months of doxycycline?
Yeah. Hmm.
Now, when you get sick again now in college and you're relapsing with Lyme because of all the stress that you're going through in your life, did you go back to that same primary care physician, or did you find another doctor to help you?
No, I found another doctor from actually my family friend who's in Atlanta, and he was more of like a homeopathic, not completely, like he still, because he prescribed me more antibiotics because I told him that's what worked for me the first time. But he was more like, he did like the muscle test and all of that kind of stuff. He didn't do blood tests, which I found a little bit strange, but I was desperate to be better, so I didn't care. I was desperate to catch it before it got to that point, and I was thankful that I knew that I had an idea of what it could be, you know? So I went to him, got my appointment. He tested me. He's like, yeah, probably relapsing like this. And I had no idea like the difference between like Bartonella and like all these different things until I went to him. I had no idea. Even when I was like sick the first time, I had no idea what that meant. So he did like all these different tests on me with these different weird things. I don't even know what he was doing. And he told me, you know, this is what you have, and we're going to put you on antibiotics, and you're going to take all the supplements again, and then we're going to give you these, this natural remedy. He just gave me a bunch of stuff. I didn't really know what it was. I just was like, whatever you say I have to take, I'm going to take. So that's what I did.
So, Alaina, you mentioned he didn't go the traditional route of running a blood test to diagnose your Lyme disease the second time. He did muscle testing. So,
Yeah.
describe for our listeners what muscle testing is and what it was like for you to go through that testing.
It was really weird. Like basically he put these things in my hand, and then he would like tell me to hold my arms up, and he would push one down as he changed out the things I was holding. And then he would say, okay, so then this shows that you need this, and this shows that you have this in you. And it was very strange for me. I'd never seen or heard of anything like that. So that was really weird for me.
We have to say that you are actually the second podcast guest today, and the first one that we just finished interviewing had the same thing where muscle testing actually helped her get diagnosed and treated. And it seems so bizarre based on how it works, but yet so many people with Lyme disease have had major success with muscle testing to figure out what exactly is causing their symptoms, not just Lyme, but what other co-infections, and then also using that to determine the proper course of treatment in regards to these specialized herbal tinctures to take. So it sounds like this was really an important part of your journey as well. And in addition to the antibiotics and supplements you were on the first time, based on your primary care physician and your family friend's recommendation, this new naturopathic doctor also prescribed you, it sounds like, an herbal tincture based on the muscle testing. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And now, what was that like taking that treatment? So now, were you still in college? Did you stop? Did you come home? And what was it like taking this medication? Did you feel worse? Did you feel better? How did it work for you?
I was still in college, and I was just taking, basically what he gave me was these things I would put in my mouth, and I would hold them there for a few seconds, and then I would swallow them. And basically it was like building my immune system back up against whatever it was. So I was still in school, doing all of this and taking all of this. And I honestly, like, it didn't seem very different because I had already gone through this once. I was just thankful that it wasn't as bad as it was. So I was willing to do whatever he told me to do. And it just felt good to know that I was treating it. So it was way less intimidating the second time for me personally.
Did you herx at all when you started treatment the second time?
I don't really remember. I don't think so, because I was way better. I knew what detoxing meant, so I did that a lot. And then this is around the same time I start changing my lifestyle. So I start cutting out a lot of sugar, a lot of drinking, eating way better, like working out, changed so much of my lifestyle too. So this was more of a wake-up call of like, okay, I have to do more than just take this medicine and let this happen again.
So it sounds like, we see this often with a lot of you are actually our 116th podcast guest today. So
oh, wow.
We've seen a lot of people who have reached remission like you have, and then go back to their normal lifestyles and end up relapsing just like you did. Our observations here at Tick Bootcamp is that once you have chronic Lyme, you have to live an intentional lifestyle, meaning you can't go back to the life you had before. You can't stay up late, you can't drink, you can't eat the wrong foods. Otherwise, you will likely have a relapse. You have to live more intentionally and get a good night's sleep. You have to eat a healthy diet. you have to exercise and do things to keep yourself in remission. Otherwise, you have a risk of going back and getting sick again. So would you agree with that analysis that we've come up with?
I think to an extent that is very true. I don't think that getting sick with Lyme disease means your life is like, gonna be over and you have to, people, if they go look me up after this and be like, oh my God, I have to do that. I have to work out every single day and do all this. No, I don't think that at all. But I think it's a blessing in disguise. Like you realize, the lifestyle you were probably living before this probably wasn't the healthiest. And there's so many different things you can start to do, even if they seem small, that can really improve your overall health and help you from, getting sick again. Like someone gets mono, teenagers all the time, you get mono in high school and then a couple of years later they get it again and they relapse and they're tired. If you think about it in terms of that, like living a healthy lifestyle helps you overall. It's way less condemning than if you're like, well, since you had this, your whole life has to change or you are going to stay sick forever. I just think that when you frame it in a different way, it just gives people more hope.
And can you give us more specific details about what you changed in your lifestyle to help you maintain a healthy life and not have a relapse with Lyme disease? So you mentioned your diet. We'll focus on that first. So what specifically did you change in your diet?
Oh, I used to eat so unhealthy. I ate a lot of sugar. I ate, I was drinking. It was in college, so I'm not like saying I was an alcoholic, but I was drinking every single weekend a lot. Sugary drinks, things like that. I was going to the drive-through all the time. I was up late studying. I would eat, candy and different things. And I was eating a lot of wheat and I ended up learning I was intolerant to that. So that changed a lot for me. And so cutting out that and a lot of sugars and things like that, that was the biggest thing I changed in my diet, trying to eat more fruit and vegetables. Overall, just a more balanced diet because I didn't realize how unhealthy I was before this. And so as I started moving into a healthier lifestyle and getting really passionate about health and wellness, it really was like, wow, I've not been healthy like my whole life. I've, never been overweight or anything like that, but I was not healthy in the slightest.
Now, did you do all of these things in parallel with the antibiotics, the supplements you were on from your family friend, and these herbal tinctures and your lifestyle changes? Or did the lifestyle changes in the diet and the exercise come after the treatment from this new naturopathic doctor?
I started trying to eat a little bit better. I didn't completely change it during when I was doing the treatment because I didn't really have this whole passion for it. But I also started wanting, I'm in college, like I started to want to look better, and feel better about my body. And so I started working out more and things like that. So when you're working out more, it transitioned into me eating better and all of that. So as I finished the treatment, it wasn't like, okay, I'm done. And then I stopped. It kind of sparked that in me. To make that, that was my new thing. Like I loved to be healthy. I loved to cook healthy meals. And so I started that probably after.
Do you think that a combination of your diet changes, your exercise, and all the supplements and treatments you got from your naturopathic doctor bolstered your immune system, and now your lifestyle changes long-term have strengthened your immune system enough to keep the Lyme disease bacteria at bay so you can live a symptom-free life and not have to worry about getting sick again?
Well, that's the hope, right? I think, I got a concussion back in last January, not the one that just happened, the one before that. And I got December, I got a concussion and I started having like all these crazy symptoms with that concussion that really resembled Lyme. And I was like, I have it again. And my dog got diagnosed with Lyme disease, 2 years ago. He wasn't sick. He just went to the vet and they do all those random tests. And they're like, yeah, well, your dog has Lyme disease. And they bring me the paper and they're like, well, I'm not sure if you've heard of this, but they hand me this and I'm frozen. My world completely stopped. I swear it was like, I thought I was going to pass out, never passed out, thought I was going to. Oh my God, it was absolutely horrible. And they put him on Doxy and like, he never had a symptom. He was totally fine. But so then that was in September. So a few months later, I get a concussion and I start having these weird symptoms that go with the concussion. And they reminded me a ton of my Lyme symptoms. And I was like, oh my God, I have Lyme again. Like, I just know I have Lyme again. And I was so scared. I went to the doctor and I had a concussion, obviously. But they were like, oh, you've recently had mono also. And I was in college and like that had gone around a ton. So I guess it wasn't like a recent infection. They just said that I had it. And, but the fear of it being Lyme again, I don't know if that ever goes away. Like, I really don't know if that's ever going to leave me. I found a tick on my dog, Brody, again. And this is a few weeks ago. And I took it off, called his vet, and I was like, I want to get antibiotics for him. And they told me no. So I called them literally like 20 times. I was like, yeah, I'm not going to stop calling until you give me the antibiotics. Like, I don't care if they're like, well, if he's sick, you bring him in. I was like, no, you don't understand. We've already gone through this. So you're going to either give me the antibiotics or I'm going to call someone that's going to give them to me. So they gave them to me. I don't think that fear ever goes away. And I know that like every tick, I mean, I have friends. I've had so many friends, seriously, in the past year that have gotten ticks on them. And you would think after knowing my story and what I went through, they would be like more scared. They always come to me and they say, oh my gosh, guess what happened? They tell me. And I'm like, go to the doctor and get medicine. Even if you're not sick, just get on some antibiotics for a little bit just to prevent whatever. No one listens to me. But
So,
go ahead.
So Alaina, you brought up a really good point that fear is real for many people with Lyme disease, that fear of getting reinfected or that fear of having a relapse. So what would you recommend for our listeners as things you've learned to help deal with that fear and anxiety and worry about either getting reinfected or having a relapse with Lyme disease?
Don't ask me about fear of being reinfected because I still refuse to hike. I still refuse to, I mean, I'll hike, but like on the trail, like when me and my family go hiking and I'm there, they know that we are staying on like the pavement. I don't go fishing. I don't do anything tall grass, still no. There's things like that I don't think are ever going to change. And I've accepted it. I have stopped telling myself, get over it. Just, whatever. I know like Lyme disease is a real thing. So if I can prevent myself from getting it or my dog or my friends or whatever, I'm going to do what I can. And for me, that's something that I don't do still. But I think I've accepted also that fear is always going to be there. And I've learned to respect it and stop being hard on myself. If I had a friend that had gone through what I had gone through and they were scared to go and like in the woods or do whatever, like a normal person that had not been sick would do, you wouldn't look at your friend and be like, get over it, like just deal with it. You look at your friend and be like, you know what, you went through something really hard and I totally understand and whatever. And I've learned to kind of give myself that same, respect. And I've also kind of understood now if I was to get sick again, because the fear is always there. And I think it always will be. And I've accepted that. And I've also told myself, if you were to get sick again or have symptoms again, like I did when I hit my head and all that happened, it's like, what you're looking at. Lyme disease is not this confusing concept to you anymore. You know what it is. If you got a symptom again and you thought that's what it was, you can go to the doctor. And so like, I try to talk myself like a little bit to like lessen my anxiety with that. But I think the fear will always be there. And until you go through something like this, you're not going to understand. I know my family doesn't get it. I know my mom gets so annoyed when we go hiking and she's like, let's just go. Like, I'm like, no, I can't. I like literally cannot. And I know she gets annoyed and I'm sure there's people that are like, oh, is she ever going to just get over it? No, I'm not, because what I went through completely changed my life. And yeah.
Alaina, you hit on a really key part that I think is so important for everybody who suffers from Lyme disease. And that really that tip is to not be so hard on yourself. And oftentimes we are so hard on ourselves and we've made such great progress, yet when you're stressing yourself out and you're being hard on yourself because of the things you won't do and because you can't get rid of that fear that's sort of baked into you, you then actually are making your body weaker and making yourself more susceptible to a relapse. So I think that you have been successfully able to implement that in your life and you should be proud of that. I think it's a really important tip for everybody listening is we need to be more patient and compassionate and caring with ourselves and not be so hard on ourselves. But I do want to go back to your concussion. So you mentioned that you had a concussion and you had symptoms that were similar to your Lyme symptoms. So were those symptoms Lyme disease or were they just symptoms of the concussion that went away after time?
They ended up going away. So I hit my head and then I started having like these crazy symptoms like headaches and all of that again, obviously. And so I got like MRIs done and all these different tests done and whatever. And then I ended up going to a doctor who is not the same doctor for my Lyme. I actually did go to that same Lyme doctor originally. Let me forget that part. So I went to that doctor again and he was like, we're going to muscle test you again. And he's like, okay, so yes, you have this and you have this and you have this. And here's all these medicines and you need to do this. And like, I was freaked out because I was like, holy crap, I have Lyme disease again. So then I like found this, I was like obsessed with it. I was like, oh my God, this cannot be happening again. So then I found this lab overseas. I'm sure a lot of people know about them, but you like send your blood to them overseas and they test it in a different way than they do in America or whatever. So I did that and they sent back like, yes, your body has been fighting these bacterias, for however long. So I'm like, oh my gosh, does this mean that I have it again? And so I just couldn't let it go. And I was like, you can't communicate with those people. They basically, you send your blood and then they send you the results and that's it. They're not, working with you. They're just testing your blood. So it's like, I have to find a doctor that's going to listen to me, that's going to blood test me, but conventional doctors, most of them, they test you with that one test and then that's it. I was like, I need to find someone that can help me. And I researched everything I could. I finally found a doctor in Atlanta who did specialize in, different diseases, not specialized in Lyme, but he treated it and they tested for it. And I just needed it on paper. Like I just needed it. Like I needed a blood test. I couldn't just rely on this like muscle testing. It didn't sit right with me. I was like, I just need something more. I went to this doctor. It was the best decision I ever made. They were the kindest people. They were so smart. They had such a good track record of treating people. And it was the first time I felt confident in a doctor. Like the first doctor that diagnosed me, I was like, thank God, years ago. But this doctor was the first time that I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like I can trust this person and they know what they're doing and they listen to me. And it was amazing. So anyway, they test me and my Lyme test came back that like the past, like definitely had it in the past. But a lot of the things that I was told I had with muscle testing, I didn't show any signs of on this blood test. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but certain things did come up. So I'm like, it would have probably shown that because a lot of this stuff, whatever. That's when I found out about the mono because I had not been tested for mono before. And that was the most recent infection that my blood was like, that was in my blood. So some point in college in the past few months, I had gotten it. But the main symptoms are from the concussion. And then also with being, really healthy and really fit and my diet or whatever, I was also lacking and high in certain vitamins and low in others. So my body was kind of out of whack just from a mix of things. And so the Lyme, the fear of that being what it was so scary to me. So finding a doctor that finally listened to me and like actually was not just trying to, do the blood test so I would shut up and be done with me. Like they actually cared about the whole history. They asked every single symptom I had over the past however many years. Oh my gosh, finding a good doctor is the best thing that you can do for yourself.
Yeah, Elaine, I think you hit on another really important part that it's not very cut and dry when it comes to diagnosing Lyme disease, even to see if you have a current infection versus a past infection. So you had gone for muscle testing and it indicated you had all this stuff active that had to be treated again. Then you shipped your blood overseas and it came back, yes, you have active infections that need to be addressed, but in your core, you felt that there was something else going on and you needed to go and get confirmation. So you went to this new doctor who ran additional blood work and it came back that you just had past infections with all of these tick diseases and mono. So now based on that, do you think, what is your personal thought? And of course, there's really no clear answer right now, but what is your personal thought on muscle testing? Do you think it was accurate the first time, or I should say the second time when you relapsed and not so much the last time you got the muscle testing, or do you think it's just not a perfect science yet? And how would you recommend it to others if you would?
Hard question. I am very science-based in many ways, but I'm also, open to other things. So I kind of fall in between. I think I'm very thankful for it because the first time it opened my eyes to a lot of things that I had never even heard of, like the difference between the bacteria. I didn't know that existed before I first got that. But the second time, that I did it when I had my concussion, it was just like, I just didn't feel like what he was, I don't know. It was just like, I just needed something more. And so I'm glad that's another thing. Like you have to advocate for yourself when you have something like this, which is what's so hard because when you're sick, you're sick and you don't want to have to do that, but you have to. And like, it just didn't sit right with me that, he's telling me I was like, I just want to be tested. I just want someone to test my blood and tell me what's in there. And obviously the main Lyme disease test doesn't work. And I was like, I knew I needed more. So I paid for my blood to be sent overseas and for them to check, whatever. So that didn't show that I had like active infections. It showed that I had definitely these cells in me that I had fought this at some point. But I knew I still didn't feel good. So I went to the next doctor. I was like, I need someone to test me that I can actually talk about this with. And so I brought in my paperwork. I brought in everything. And that's when I found out about, yes, you had Lyme in the past. These are past infections. This is what you have most recently, blah, blah, blah. So with muscle testing, I think, some people it works and some people it's great. And I'm thankful for it. It helped me the first time. I'm not saying I would knock it to anyone, but for me, it was just helpful to like finally find a doctor that was open to like a more deeper dive blood test than just that generic one, because I don't think that one works at all.
And this is just another really important lesson. I mean, you keep giving us lesson after lesson after lesson here.
Oh.
To trust your gut, right? I mean, you had somebody who had helped you the first time with muscle testing tell you that you needed to go a certain route, but your gut was telling you differently. Your gut was right. You now go into this other doctor for your blood work, and you decide you're just gonna. It sounds like just balance out your vitamins. From working out, you had too much of some levels and too low of other levels. You balance out your vitamins. You don't treat the Lyme and co-infections the way you were recommended to with the doctor who muscle tested you, and yet you still get better, correct?
Yeah. I think, it was when you told me that I did not want to do any of when I was scared that it was Lyme and I went to do those tests at first, and he told me, yes, this is what you have. I was like, I'll do the herbal stuff. That's fine if that's what you want me to do. But look, I want some medicine. Like I had done a bunch of research of like different medicines. Like if this is what it is, I want to do this, this, and this. And he's like, well, we're going to do like a natural I was like, no, we're not. Like I want, I was just so scared that this was happening again. And it just didn't feel right to me. And I was like, if I could see it on a blood test and it would tell me this is what it is, I would be like, okay, yes, I can do that. I'll treat this. And so when I went to the next doctor and I got those blood tests back and they were like, okay, no, like you did have Lyme, but that's not what you have now. You have, a concussion, and you also recently have had this infection. And plus your body's out of whack and you need to do this and this and this. Like, I don't know what it was about the blood test that just kind of put my mind at ease. So like, yes, it gave me answers of, yes, you did have a recent virus and this is what the virus was. And whether or not that was from a relapse or like from, I don't know. I'll never know probably. But it just put my mind at ease a lot and like gave me a better plan. And so just trusting yourself, and like if you feel like you need more answers, and get them. And like I think getting multiple opinions is really important also, which can be hard because it's expensive to do that when you have something like this, because a lot of doctors aren't open to treating it or know anything really what to do. But yeah, I think I just went off on a tangent.
Nope, that's actually a really, really good point right there. Is your doctor who did all this muscle testing most likely was not covered by insurance, and likely many of your other treatments and doctors are not covered. So thinking back, could you estimate how much money you had to spend out of pocket for all of your doctors, your treatments, even including your supplements that you had to buy just to supplement your antibiotics?
Thousands of dollars. I couldn't tell you. Over the whole thing?
Yes.
Thousands of dollars. Probably more expensive. Do I get to count in that I changed my whole lifestyle because of this, and now I eat super healthy and I'm not eating off the $5?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, thousands of dollars. Oh my God. And so my parents at first paid for everything, obviously, when I was in high school. And then when I got sick the second time, still my parents. But then this past time when I was sick, I mean, I have my own business now, so I was paying for it. And so then I was like, damn, this really is a lot.
Now, your concussion experience, that was after you had graduated from college. So obviously, it sounds like
no, actually, that was December before graduation. And so I was like, are you freaking kidding me? Right before I graduate again, I'm going to get sick. And I was like, this is like ridiculous. And so I moved home. I was so sick. Oh my God, my concussion was awful. It was so bad. Plus factoring in everything else and these viruses I didn't know I had and everything. I was so sick from like December, January, February, March. I moved home to my dad's 2 hours away from school, and I commuted every day to school, every single day, because I was like, my anxiety was so bad. But that was the only symptom that really resembled Lyme, was the anxiety, which was honestly, may have been worse than when I had Lyme, because it was the concussion really, really messed with my head. Plus, like I have my own business and I absolutely love it. And so I had gone from overworking constantly for 2 years to like, I think my brain was just like, girl, you need to chill out. And so the anxiety was so bad with the concussion. And that's what really made me think it was Lyme, because of the anxiety. That was pretty much the only symptom that resembled it. But I think that's another reason I kind of knew when I was told that. I was like, I need more answers, because I remember I felt a lot more physically sick than this. Mentally, I think my concussion was worse than when I had Lyme. But yeah.
Were you able to now move on and graduate college, or did the
Yeah,
concussion
so
prevent you
after
from?
commuting for 4 months, I finally, started to feel a little bit better. I got put on anxiety and depression medicine because they say sometimes when you get a concussion, it can trigger that, especially if you've already had that in your past, and that helped a ton. After I got those second round of blood tests and found out about those viruses and my vitamins, I started changing my diet, to balance everything out, and I felt so much better. So I moved back to school for like the last month, and I finished strong and I graduated, which is amazing. So yeah.
Congratulations. So now, have you been feeling good ever since you graduated and post your concussion experience?
Yeah. So I felt a lot better. I was on anxiety medicine for a few months, and then I came off of it. And so pretty much now anxiety is just like my main battle. Physically, I take care of myself, work out, eat healthy, whatever. But anxiety is something I really battle, and I have PTSD. I did therapy again. They told me that I have PTSD from having Lyme, and that's surprising, but also not, because it was really hard for me. So yeah, that's something I battle more, like just mental health and things like that. But I guess it's something that I'll continue to battle until I don't. So
Many people with Lyme do suffer from PTSD. It's actually more common than you think. I think it's just a topic that many don't want to openly share, but
Mhm.
it is more common than you would think. And one observation I've had this whole time since we started talking about the discussion, the concussion, is that we've had a lot of guests talk about getting multiple concussions, one or many, after their Lyme experience. So one of the symptoms of Lyme is disorientation, dizziness, depth perception, balance
Yeah.
problems. Do you think those symptoms could have potentially caused you to get your head injury? And maybe it's a reach, but it just seems there's a lot of people out there with Lyme that we've interviewed that have had a concussion post Lyme disease.
No, I was cleaning, and something fell on my head when I went under my bed to clean, and something fell on my head. So no, it's just me being an idiot, actually. But no, that is so true that, Lyme can cause these things for people that, stick around in these symptoms. And so I've never really considered that. But unfortunately, no, for me, I'm just dumb. So
No.
So, Alaina, share with us what role your Lyme journey played in your entrepreneurial experience.
yeah, so Lyme opened the door. People say you go through something hard, and like, would you change it? Would you take it away? And if I did that, I literally would not be the person I am in the place I am. It taught me that I love health and wellness. It taught me that, I've actually gotten to work with so many amazing women with Lyme disease too, that find me through Instagram, that like I give them hope and things like that. And I'm like, wow, that really means so much to me. Um, so it really just taught me what I love and helped me make a business out of it. So it definitely, yeah.
Well, share with our listeners what that business is and how your Lyme journey brought you to that business.
Yeah, so I am a health and wellness coach online. Basically, I do workouts and nutrition and help girls get healthy at a distance. Everything's virtual. So I absolutely love that. And the way that Lyme really played a role in that is I had to start eating healthier and exercising a little bit more and taking care of my body. And I fell in love with that. So that's what opened the door for me to get involved with health and wellness. And so then slowly after that, I was like, I want to help more people do this. So that's how I did that.
So how is the business going, and how would someone get in touch with you if they wanted to work with you in this arena?
Yeah, it's going amazing. I absolutely love it. I've now expanded, so I also mentor girls that want to become coaches as well. So that's another thing that I love to do. And Instagram, definitely the way to go. It's just Alaina Hamade on Instagram, and I would love to talk with anybody. So yeah.
So what other kinds of things are you doing with your business? I understand you also have a podcast.
I do. I have a new podcast. It's brand new. It's called I Got You Girl. It's just for 20-something-year-old girls. It's nothing to do with my business. It's just something that I love to do on the side. I've always been, the responsible one, the friend that everyone goes to for advice. I was like, let me just expand on this a little bit and share more advice and tips for girls that are in kind of the same place of life as me.
So folks wanted to listen to your podcast, where could they find your podcast published?
Apple Podcasts, and then it's also linked on my social media.
So now I'm going to ask you one last thing in the spirit of helping people in the community. If God forbid your mom came into your room right now and showed you a tick biting her on her leg, what would you recommend that she do so she wouldn't have to go through the terrible parts of the journey that you had to go through?
Yeah, I would say go take the tick off, keep it, so you can get it tested. But I would also say just go to the doctor and get on antibiotics. Even if you don't think, even if you just found it on you and it's not attached to you, just go do it. Why not? I'd rather have a stomach ache for 2 weeks than have to deal with all of this.
Thank you for listening to the Tick Bootcamp interview with Alaina Hamade. To our listeners, we have a call to action. First, if you'd like to learn more about Alaina Hamade and her tick disease journey, please visit our Instagram page at alaina.hamade, Hamade. Second, if you enjoyed this episode of the Tick Bootcamp podcast, please share it with your friends by using the social media buttons you see at the bottom of the post. Third, Tick Bootcamp has created a Tick Bite Blueprint that has been inspired by the information that has been shared with us by past podcast guests. We urge you to visit our website at www.tickbootcamp.com to view the blueprint. Please note we would appreciate any input or improvements you would like to offer. Fourth, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Google Podcasts, or Spotify to get the automatic episode updates of our Tick Bootcamp podcast. And finally, please take a minute to leave us an honest review and rating on iTunes or on our website. Thank you for listening.